What's going on, guys? It's Greg Mixos Dies, and welcome to another Monday update video where I'm going to let you know everything you need to know from around the lacrosse community that happened in the last week and what's going to be going on in the next week. So first off, starting with our good news segment, where I bring you guys good news from around the lacrosse world in a time when we really need some good news. If you have some, leave it down in the comments or send it to me in a DM at ECDGreg on Instagram. So our first bit of good news comes from our friend Jerry Raganese from Pro Athletics, the PLL, and the Faceoff Academy. They've been making masks for personal protection during this time, and he is doing a really great thing by protecting his frontline workers that are making sure that his product can get to his end users. He's been making masks for UPS and USPS that are custom branded and printed. They're really, really cool, and we wear his masks here at ECD, and they are super comfortable. And he just let me know they're gonna be donating masks to Chic-Fil-A that are fully branded. It's a donation from him to try and keep what is one of my favorite restaurants up and going during the shutdown.
I like the mask. Thanks, buddy.
Try when I turn it off. I think we pay there.
Do we pay that? Do we pay you guys? Oh, let's run right past you.
Next up is a new stringing business at String It Forward is the Instagram handle, and he let me know he's going to be donating all proceeds from his string jobs to COVID relief. So if you need a pocket while you're at home, hit up at String It Forward on Instagram, and it's going to go to a great cause, and you'll get a great pocket as well. Kent Lacrosse, which is a club over in England, has committed to running almost 1,000 miles in an effort to raise money for COVID relief. We'd love to see the international lacrosse game growing and these guys getting involved in a really great way. So you can find them over on Instagram as well. And finally, even though there's no lacrosse season, there is some lacrosse on TV. So ESPNU, Big Ten Network, and ACC Network seem to be replaying some older games from the playoffs. One thing that I do know, I'm having a hard time tracking down the exact schedule, but at 5 p.m. on Saturday, ESPNU is going to have Brown versus Maryland in one of the older semifinals. Follow us on Instagram at ECDLax, and every time I see a game on TV, I'll make sure to update you guys on my story, but there's at least going to be some games on TV, even though there's no new live ones. In some content news, we put out our first Wednesday basement tutorial where I'm teaching you guys how to string back in the basement of my house where I first started the business. The first one up was Grant Ament in the Maverick Tactic 2.0. Make sure to stay tuned for a new episode on this channel every Wednesday. We've got a really great one coming up this Wednesday. It's Costabile from Notre Dame. So come on Wednesday, see how he strings up his Under Armour Command 2, and also go watch the Grant Ament tutorial if you want to know how he strings his pocket. And more YouTube content to keep you guys busy right now. Eddie Martin, one of my favorite lacrosse filmers and editors, and I've worked with him a bunch of times on the sidelines. Put out a tribute for the Cabrini season. They won the championship last year. They're off to a great start in 2020. So he put together a nice little film. He does some of the best job in lacrosse and filming. So I would definitely go watch that with a link in the description for you guys to go check that out. And also something new for you guys to watch on YouTube, Mitchell Pelkey. Here I've got his shirt. Is one of my favorite lacrosse YouTubers. He plays at Ohio State now. He's been putting out some great content ever since his school season got canceled. And now he's got a podcast, which has been really great. The first episode I really enjoyed is with Jules Henenberg. So I'll put the link down in the description to go subscribe to him and stay tuned for more of his really fun, really hilarious videos, and also his new podcast, which has some great educational content. Also, the MLL Draft is tonight at 7:30. You can watch on their social media channels. There's still a lot up in the air on who is gonna go where and who's even declaring for professional drafts. So it will be really interesting to see how that turns out. And also, it's hard to commit when their season still hangs in the balance. They still haven't announced when it's going to start or how it's going to start. But that draft's tonight, and I would stay tuned because it'll be really interesting to see how they run that and what happens. Also, I have a little bit of news on summer lacrosse. Corrigan Sports, who runs many of the biggest name tournaments across the country, as well as the Under Armour All-America program, has announced a little teaser that they're going to put together some kind of a Maryland championship. Really interested to see what that turns out being. And they also announced that they are trying to adjust Under Armour All-America underclass tryouts. Usually they hold those in cities all across the country. Right now they're trying to figure out when and how they can do those tryouts in an effort to keep, I guess, the senior game and the underclass championships intact. So I'll keep you guys in the loop as that moves forward, but hopefully we're going to see some lacrosse at some point later in the summer. Finally, before we get into player movement, there's been some really big news out of the NCAA, and that is that there's a petition on the table to allow compensation for players. So this would be really interesting. As you guys know, NCAA players have never been able to make money off their image and likeness while in college. That means they don't get a part of jersey sales. That means they can't run camps and clinics with their name. Any way that's going to benefit from their name, if they are an NCAA athlete, is not allowed. This would allow them to do some level of endorsement deals, which would be great. I think it was really unfair that the school was allowed to make money from college players' likenesses and images and sell tickets and jerseys against them, but the player can never make any money. This is going to open that door up a little bit. It's still up in the air if it's going to get approved or what the exact stipulations would be, but I think that would be a really big shakeup in the college sports landscape and would have an immediate impact on lacrosse for sure. And now player movement, not quite as crazy of a week as last week where we saw the Sowers news and a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Pretty simple, one big thing. Cole Williams from Hopkins, one of their best players, has entered the transfer portal. He's still listed on the roster as a 2021 graduate student at Hopkins, but as soon as Petramala left Hopkins, he entered the transfer portal, so we'll see where he ends up. And also Stephen Rafis announced that he was going to be returning to Syracuse, just adding to their crazy roster of already great players and already great seniors who are going to come back, so they're not losing a lot of talent going into 21. And finally, the Q&A section. Leave any questions you want answered next week down in the comments or DM to me at ECDGreg on Instagram. This one comes from Instagram, and the question is, do you think the PLL will make the MLL obsolete, or will the MLL be the minor league while the PLL is the show? This is a really good question, and it's too early to call how this is going to shake out. I mean, this summer not having essentially live professional sports is going to have a big impact on both leagues, and it'll be really interesting to see how each of them reacts differently. The PLL being a little more nimble as a tour-based model, the MLL being city-based. So we're going to see how they are able to consolidate their season and still play despite the current conditions. I think that there's a place for both of them, like I said, with the tour and the cities. They don't overlap all that often, so last year they were both able to run relatively successfully. It'll just be a question of how they come out of this downturn. Next question comes from Todd on Instagram, and he said, since NBC has extended the free access to the PLL through May, what are your favorite games to watch? Well, the championship is a must watch. I saw that in person. You're not going to get much better than a first-year league with an overtime championship winner and a little comeback. But my second favorite game was the Atlas versus the Whip Snakes under the lights at Hopkins. I was there as well, obviously, and watching Ryan Drenner score a couple of those really exciting goals. That was one of the best lacrosse environments I've ever been in and one of the best games I've ever seen live. So those are the two I would start rewatching immediately. All right, two big questions out of the comments. The most liked question is, any news on Jeff Teat? Have not heard anything about Jeff Teat. Just like Michael Sowers, just like T.D. Erlin, he would have to go somewhere else because the Ivy League is not granting that extra year. So I haven't heard any news if he's entered the transfer portal or if he's going to declare for the PLL, but he wouldn't be able to stay at Cornell if he wants to play. He's going to have to transfer somewhere else. And the other question, any news on Pat Spencer? I haven't heard anything personally. I have said before, I think he's going to go into basketball, so we'll have to see where that shakes out. And if he is going to come back, he'll be in the Archers, and they have the first pick, so that'll be a stacked squad if he does decide to come back to lacrosse. All right, guys, so that wraps us up for this Monday update. Make sure to leave your questions in the comments or send your questions and good news to me on Instagram at ECDGreg. Thanks for watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you next week.